Will you commit to making sure that there is a peaceful transferal of power after the election?
Get rid of the ballots. There won't be a transfer, frankly. There'll be a continuation.
Donald Trump is unprecedented in American history. No other sitting president has said he might refuse to leave if he loses. But these terrifying statements merely expose a 70-year-old system that has empowered the office of the presidency way beyond what most people realize.
So there is this period of 3 months during which a president who has been defeated or whose second term has expired or is about to expire, nonetheless is in charge of the military. Let's imagine a scenario where a president loses his bid for re-election and then loses his mind, in part because of the defeat, in part because of some previously existing mental problem. He loses control. If a president rolled out of bed on one day and wanted to end the world and called in the code, and there was no war going on, our hope would be that the military officers receiving the go codes might ask for higher authority or simply say, no, Mr. President, that is not a legal order. But technically, they don't have to. If the president says go, they're supposed to go.
We've seen so many of the institutions of the United States buckle under President Trump: the courts, the Senate, the Justice Department. Maybe I'm overly hopeful, but the military seems to be one of the last institutions that he hasn't managed to corrupt.
It wouldn't be the first time that a president's ability to unleash America's nukes was restrained.
For over 4 months, Watergate has dominated the news media. It is my constitutional responsibility to defend the integrity of this great office against false charges.
As Watergate began to take down the Nixon presidency, Richard Nixon began to unravel. His drinking was out of control. He was wandering the halls of the White House, talking to the portraits and talking to himself and talking to God. He would talk about picking up a phone and bombing his enemies.
So Secretary of Defense James Schlesinger let it be known to the Joint Chiefs of Staff that any order to use nuclear weapons by Nixon had to go through him. Now, technically, if Schlesinger had overruled Nixon on the use of nuclear weapons, it would have been an act of mutiny. But he was sufficiently concerned about Nixon's mental health that he wanted to make sure there wouldn't be a catastrophe.
But even if nuclear war can be averted by clear-headed officials, all lamed-up presidents have the ability to invoke the top-secret presidential emergency action documents.
We know that the Department of Justice was in the process of updating these documents as recently as 2018. So the question becomes, what does the Trump administration view as the outer limits of presidential power?
When somebody's the president of the United States, the authority is total. And that's the way it's got to be. The authority is total.
That is not true. Who told you the president has the total authority?
Enough.
Trump has repeatedly hinted about the secret powers and the unimaginable capabilities that he could have in an emergency. The challenge is we don't literally know what those are.
The worst case scenario is if this president were to exploit the actual emergency presented by COVID-19 and or to try to manufacture emergencies, maybe by provoking violence in relation to some of the protests around police brutality, and to use those situations as a pretext to deploy the military or to engage in other extreme uses of emergency powers in a way that could undermine a fair and free election and undermine our democracy.
They say that they're going to threaten riots if they lose. on election night. What are you gonna do?
We'll put them down very quickly
How you
if they
gonna do
do that.
that?
We have the right to do that. We have the power to do that if we want. Look, it's called insurrection. We just send in and we do it very easy.
In that extreme situation, if all of these powers were deployed, what you're looking at is a democracy turning into an autocracy.
We're entering a very perilous chapter of American history. When you can't trust that the president is acting in the nation's best interests.
Any attempt to really impose martial law, I think, would ultimately fail. But I could imagine the arrest of key members of Congress or leading figures in the United States that would profoundly harm our democratic systems even more severely than they are right now. By the way, I can't even fucking believe that we're talking about these scenarios.